I'm Sir Flowbojan Thunderhammer.
And I'm Teflon Frosthammer.
And I'm Cabbage Tidehammer.
And this
is
Whack.
If Amtgard Knighthood means anything, you can't knife a motherfucker and keep it.
And the thing that people need to understand essentially about arts and sciences events is that your scores don't matter.
Do you want a black phoenix or a white phoenix?
Jeez, language, man. We're on
right.
a freaking podcast, for fuck's sake.
Mind-blowing experience, right?
We can't start naming all of our dances. That would be chaos. Welcome to Whack. I don't have the intro pulled up. Podcast, interesting people, foam fighting world. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey guys.
You did great.
Listen, we're continuing our
Still
series.
probably better than mine.
Right. We're doing our best here. We're continuing our series of what the hell even is Amtgard. This is going to be parts 6 and 7 of the outline, so we're going to talk about what else is out there. If you like foam fighting, but Amtgard doesn't sound like your particular cup of tea, or if you just want to know what those are. And then we're also going to talk about why we choose Amtgard and why you might choose it too. Before that, we have some audience corrections. Like I said at the very start of this, we're going to address these at the top of every episode. So from Rabbit, we talked about awards in the previous session. And we didn't know if Duchy and Grand Duchy, like what award tiers they could give out. Grand Duchy can give up to 8th level awards. Duchy can give up to 7th level awards. So thank you, Rabbit. Also, this is something we'll cover in the next episode, so I'll skip it for now. There is another Amtgard position, we'll just call it an Amtgard position that we did not address, that doesn't fit within the normal structure of Amtgard, so we kind of skipped it. That is the Amtgard Ombudsman. So really quickly to address what that is, an ombudsman, traditionally, when we're just looking at the meaning of the word, they're a person that investigates internal power issues. So, you can't directly investigate the president or the prime minister of a country. The ombudsman can. They have that authority. So in a similar vein, the Amtgard Ombudsman is the person you talk to if you feel like your kingdom's doing something it shouldn't be or that's against its rules, and you want that investigated by a higher power. The ombudsman is not your best friend. They are not going to help you overturn every case. If you got banned, the Amtgard Ombudsman is simply going to go and make sure that you followed the correct procedure for that ban and then tell you what your options are going forward. Mm-hmm. So not all powerful, but if you think some power has been abused, that's who you go to. So they don't fit directly in the structure. That's why we kind of missed it. Let's see. So we were wrong about the number of kingdoms and principalities. This came from Aldrich, I believe. 22 kingdoms, 2 principalities.
We were pretty close.
Yeah, I think we said 23 kingdoms.
Yeah.
Is that? I feel
Horseshoes.
Well, yeah. Horseshoes, kind of. So those are the big audience corrections that we have from the previous episodes. You guys want to just jump right into the outline?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good idea.
All right. So what other games are out there? So we've talked a lot about Amtgard and its specific rules and structures. We can't get that in depth on other games, but we can give you an overview of what they are, and maybe those games will have a resource for you. I know, Teflon, you had a way of structuring this that I think was cool. We're going to talk about the armored combat stuff first.
Cool. So I kind of break things down into 3 generalized categories. Armored combat is one of them. So that's things like SCA, Armored Combat League, Buhurt. I feel like I'm missing one that's a pretty big one.
SCA, Armored Combat.
HEMA.
No, HEMA's not an armored combat.
Is it not armored?
No, that's just the German law. Okay. Yes, they wear like the kendo helmets and stuff like that in their official
I don't
tournaments.
remember all these. This is not something that I'm really big on.
Maybe real steel combat is another way to delineate this, because they do that too.
And so that is kind of one category there. The other one would be the heavier combat focused Boffer LARPs, which are going to be like Belagarth, Dagorhir, Hearthlight, I think Darkon to some degree, and those typically why I consider them harder is most of them, if not all of them, have a minimum weight for the weapons, so you have to kind of meet that requirement with your weapons as well, and then it's kind of
as a byproduct, those hits can be harder as well.
Yeah, that force equals mass times acceleration, so you have more mass to it. And then Amtgard kind of slides in the middle, and I haven't found another middle grounder, so Amtgard kind of gets its own little column for me, basically. So I guess it's 4 categories rather than 3. And then after that is kind of lightest touch, which the big national one that I'm aware of is Nero. And
Heroes, or is that what it's called?
Hero or Hit or something like that, I think was a more localized one. But that's kind of a good point to bring up. That a lot of the lightest touch LARPs are a little more localized in some ways. Like Dystopia Rising, I think technically falls under this, and it's kind of like southeastern United States, I think. Technically, I think there's some in Alabama, so it's not quite southeastern specific, but depending upon where you draw lines. Dystopia Rising's one. Exodune used to be, maybe still one. I'm not really sure.
Right.
Is Exodune the one where like it was Nerf guns and bullets were a very rare thing to come across? So everybody had the gun, right?
If it's not fucking Dune themed, I'm not interested.
Man, a Doom LARP would get.
Let me
Dune
roleplay
LARP would
my
be really
Sandworm
cool.
fantasies.
Oh man, are you kidding me? I'm gonna be part of the Landsrod. Fuck all you guys.
I don't know if that's what a sandworm sounds like in my head. When I read the books, that's what it sounded like.
And then I guess there's actually another one that I really thought of. Another category would be kind of parlor LARPs.
It's your Vampire the Masquerade, werewolf.
that kind of thing. Again, this is not a section that I'm really familiar with, but I do know it's out there, and it is somebody's cup of tea.
Yeah.
I know a little bit about those.
Yeah.
So there's a million ways you can categorize these. You can categorize them based on the equipment requirements, based on the the immersion level, based on So there's probably no perfect system, but this gives people an idea of what's out there. Let's break some of these down. So let's start at those that first tier that you put together.
Okay.
Those armored combat. I know SCA, Armored Combat League, Booher. To me, the biggest differentiator there is that there is an armor requirement. You must be wearing armor to play.
Yeah, you are using rattan or metallic weapons or something like that, so you have to have armor that is fully covered and things like that, or mostly fully covered, depending upon which rules.
It's important to point out that even within this, there's gradients too. Like SCA would, though this is a full armor, would actually be on the lighter side. Not that they swing lighter, but in SCA, I think that the requirements are have to have helmet, have to have gorget to protect your neck, have to have kidney
Protect
belt.
your neck. Sorry.
Yeah. Have to have kidney belt, have to have gloves. And I think like shin protection or
Shin
leg
and forearms,
protection,
maybe. I don't remember.
knee.
There's
Covering some vital spots.
Yeah, so
joints.
but I've seen people in SCA that go out with only those mins, and it's gone forever. I've seen people that go out in only those mins, whereas in something like Armored Combat League, there's no way that could fly. Like that is a blunted steel weapon.
Also, like a minor difference here, and you're going to see in each subsection basically, and things like that. Like SCA does not allow throws or any kind of manipulation from your hands. It is strictly a hit system, kind of similar to Amtgard or Belgarth or something like that. However, like some of the ACL or not HEMA, I don't think, but Boohurt and stuff like that. The way you quote unquote call dead is either you call dead through pain problems or you hit the ground. So like throws and judo type throws and stuff like that are allowed, and like if you lose your weapon, you're not down or anything because you could still put people on the ground.
You can start
like
punching people.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
I've seen everything up to horse collars to throw people to the ground. And just to clarify too, because I actually had a buddy that did HEMA. HEMA is just a German longsword style. That's, I believe, all that they teach. Their tournaments are German.
It's historical European medieval
martial arts or something.
Yeah, historical European martial arts. I think is.
I understand.
Yeah,
I believe that they are
like
just. Look at fact check me here. I believe that they're just a German longsword technique. They actually use rattan. They do wear the kendo helmets in their tournaments, but they're not really an armor sort of thing.
So it lists here as historical European martial arts are martial arts of European origin, particularly using arts formerly practiced but having since died out or evolved into very different forms. So I think there
may be some kind of delineation inside of HEMA.
Yeah, there
that
may be
unaware of
subsets
too.
within HEMA, but broadly spoken, it's any European style I think flies under that banner if they want to.
That's fair. Perhaps it was just that person that was teaching around here in Knoxville specialized in the German longsword or something like that. Hey, if you're listening to this and you're from HEMA, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, they actually have listed here. They refer to, and there's also a fair amount of the research and academia portion in this as well. I have seen where they'll look at old combat manuscripts and role play those and figure out how they were meant to work. But it even says here, some treatises cover all manner of swords, pole arms, unarmed combat, sickles, daggers, and other weapons. So
there you go.
So what I'm going to say about these, because again, we don't play these, they're going to have different immersion requirements. I know SCA is big on immersion and historical accuracy where they can be, but by and large, these are your high-cost LARPs. I'm not going to categorize everything by cost, but I think the part that stands out to me the most about these and why I haven't played them is because the barrier to entry is fairly high.
Yeah. Your armor costs a lot.
Well, and if it doesn't, it's probably not very good for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good resources out there. I can guarantee you there is a group on Facebook that is selling used armor that will fit you. I don't care what your size is.
Yeah.
There's a huge secondary market. Maybe that's the best way to say that. Huge secondary market for games like that. It's still going to be expensive to get together, and you also have membership fees because they have national insurance.
Or at least some of them do anyway. I don't know.
Yeah.
SCA specifically does.
Yeah.
The others,
I don't know. I don't know enough about. But yeah, so they may have a national insurance or some kind of fee that you have to pay. And this is in addition to any fee to get into the events and perhaps enter any of the bouts or anything like that. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you there. That is definitely a barrier. I would also like to add to that barrier that there's a physical barrier. It's odd because a lot of the people that I see play this are older people. But we cannot overlook the fact that you are wearing probably 45 pounds or more worth of gear.
Minimally 20.
Depending on your kit, for sure.
Yeah.
And not everyone is capable of carrying around that much weight. Joint problems and other health things going on. This is not to take away from any of those games. They are awesome games. They're great to watch. Yep. I have never played any of these.
Yeah.
But it is something to consider that if you are someone that are at a point in your life where you already have some kind of joint problem, this isn't the one for you.
Yeah, Oh, go ahead.
And some of this is, why this is what the hell is AmpGuard and why would we bring up other games and stuff is that while I feel AmpGuard has a pretty big covering of different things, that may not necessarily be your cup of tea. And I would like to see you, if you're interested in it in minorly, maybe find a game that's better for you, or perhaps AmpGuard or another game or something like that isn't in your area and one of these are, and that way you can check out at least something adjacent before you try to make your own park or something weird like that, right?
I don't want to speak for everyone sitting in this room right now or listening to this podcast, but I feel like these are not mutually exclusive games either. We have plenty of people who play SCA and then come to play AmpGuard.
I played Dag and Bellegarth for a time because it was closer.
So where we grow the LARP community, we grow our game also.
Yep.
It's a healthy byproduct. And you're going to hear people talk about these games. They'll say, oh, is that a Dag move? Are we playing Dag rules? You'll hear that at your park. You need to know what it means, and this can be a helpful resource for that. I will also say, when we're talking about these armored combat LARPs and LARPs in general, SCA might be the most ubiquitous.
They've been around the longest, I think.
I'm sure, and you'll always hear about Pennsic and crazy events, and that footage for that movie was actually shot at Pennsic. They didn't even need extras; they just got everybody to sign a release, and that happens. SCA is pretty ubiquitous in that way. I think partially because of how it presents itself, and then also, like you said, its pedigree, how long it's been around. But yeah, barrier to entry there, and reason you might play it, you want more serious or more historically accurate combat. Reason you might not play it, it's very expensive.
Potentially slightly, not really slightly more dangerous necessarily. The injuries that can happen may be more problematic.
I'll say this: when you buy armor, you get what you pay for, right?
Oh yeah.
Don't go on Amazon and buy the cheapest motorcycle helmet.
This goes for all of these games too. As far as armor goes.
Yes, absolutely. It comes to protecting yourself in general, right? Just if you want to be really base about it, buy good shit, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
You can get hurt in any of these games. All of us have been hurt playing various games, but the potential for greater injury is there, even though you have greater protection to try and mitigate that.
Right.
That's my feeling.
Yeah. So there's that middle tier, which AmpGuard kind of plays a shortstop to, I guess.
Yeah, kind of.
And that's your Dagger here, Belagarth. You mentioned a couple of others.
Hearthlight, Darkon.
Yeah. So where do those fit into the schema? They're not more expensive to play, I guess. How do they differ greatly?
The big difference is the minimum weights on the weapons. I don't remember, and they're probably slightly different between some of them, so I don't want to really give a number per se.
Yeah.
And the sufficient force rules are typically in all of these, and that means that usually you're going to see a little harder hitting than necessarily Amped Guard, depending upon your area and culture, fighting culture in your areas. And the armor and magic systems in them. Darkon, I believe, has some stuff that is very different than the other ones, where the other ones have like a armor system that's very similar to each other, but it's in Amped Guard terms, it's kind of like a 1 point of armor, but that's not exactly right either.
Right.
And they enforce a minimum garb as well. I think all of those do.
Yeah, this is an immersion factor. You have to be wearing garb. You have to be in some kind of character.
No Nike swooshes on your shoes.
It's just
no...
most of it is like no modern logos can be seen,
right.
And things like that. And you should have some sort of top and bottom garb requirement, I think, is how it's kind of sort of presented.
Yeah.
They have more shield bashing and shield contact rules. That is allowed more so than Amped Guard. Those are really the big key ones. There's probably, I can list probably more, but those are the big ones.
Well, we'll table that for now, because I think this is where Amped Guard shares the most overlap. We have the most cross gamers between Bell and Dag. Oftentimes, you can take a weapon from one and take it to the other, and it'll in some cases work.
Usually from theirs to ours.
Yeah, you can bring them
not so
down.
much from Amped Guard up,
because our swords are too light, right?
Yes, most of the time, yes.
And you have a lot of really good workshops out there, like Gorg and Lady Gorg's workshop, and Uncle Steaky's workshop, which is my night, that will make cross gaming weapons. There's some others out there too. What's the one that used to be Warlord Sports? I think it was.
I don't know the one that Brett
shoot, I
runs
used to
now.
know it.
I can't remember the name of it. But
yeah,
Warlord Brett kind of took over the foam medieval sport style games of Warlord Sports, and I don't remember the name of it, unfortunately. We'll probably have a link in this episode for it.
Yeah, I can put that.
Yeah.
And there's also stuff like Smiling Foam Works. You can find boffer style swords that will work for these games pretty much anywhere. The battery for our camera just died.
Aha. Okay.
Yep. That's okay. This will be an audio only episode.
Yeah.
No big deal. Yeah, it's gonna happen.
It's weird because there was a lot of charge. Maybe it got overheated.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. Some of these episodes will start coming to you in 4K. I know we actually the reason this battery probably died is because we just did an hour and 40 minutes with a guest that we'll be showing here.
Yeah, next
couple of weeks. So yeah, this will be an audio only episode. That's fine. Not a lot of visual aids here, and it's just our ugly faces.
Yeah.
So what we'll do, though, is we'll put the Belagarth and Dagger here's off to the side for a moment, because it'll segue nicely into something I have planned.
Okay.
Let's talk about those parlor LARPs, those...
Lightest Touch and Parlor are kind of slightly different, but yeah.
Yeah.
So the Lightest Touch, I know that you specifically, Jeff, have a little bit of experience with. You've been out to some.
Mm-hmm.
We have a buddy named Hero who ran some locally here. Yep. If you've ever heard us refer to LARPy LARP before a couple of times on the show, that's what we were referring to. Is it's a Lightest Touch LARP. Let's start by explaining what a Lightest Touch LARP means.
I mean, it's a pretty generalized thing, but it means that whatever touches you is going to count, because it is not as physically demanding combat necessarily. The other big thing that's is the immersion factor. Almost all of them have a world that they have figured out and is in their rules, and it's all caked in together. So you have to fit into their narrative usually. Like, I know Dystopia Rising has several different factions, and they kind of have a quote-unquote real-world look to some of these factions, and they have like dress code, basically, or garb requirements, whatever you want to call it, for different factions.
You
and
should be
things
able to
like
look
this.
at someone in a faction and go, oh, they're part of the so-and-so.
Yeah, so kind of like if you look at Avatar: The Last Airbender and you see a random character in the background walk by, and you can tell which nation they're
Yeah,
from.
that's Earth Nation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You can tell which nation they're from based on what their garb or clothing they're wearing is. So that is a big thing in the lightest touch LARPs typically. The other thing, I didn't drop a coin or anything like that. The other thing would be the requirements for the weapons. Typically, the lightest touch LARPs don't care much for buffers because they're immersion breaking. They're
you'll
not
see the
representative.
latex
Yeah,
swords
you'll
in
see the
this.
Calamasil weapons. You'll see latex type weapons. And there's tons of places you can buy things like that for them.
And I think that they also have specific shot requirements. So I can't take one of the big latex sort of weapons way over my head and swing it down wanting to cleave someone
So,
in twain.
Correct.
From-
There's also go ahead.
From what I've read, that will vary from game to game.
It does. IDES is kind of a semi-local one, and they were designed to be a little closer to Amtgard fighting, so you'll get a little bit heavier hits in that one. Whereas some others, like Nero, you don't typically see Amtgard level of hits in them and things like that. The other thing is a lot of the lightest touch LARPs have number of hits per second that you can put out.
Yeah, you have a swing speed that you
They
can
have
actually...
hit points more likely than shot location like Amtgard or Dagahir or Belgarth and all those kinds of games. I guess that's another delineation that I didn't really think of until just now.
There's a lot of... I mean, these are all very unique games, so
Yeah.
to list them all would be a very long
Trying to
episode.
talk in generalities, but this is another thing that a lot of them share is that there is an HP system. There's some sort of MP type system, whether you call it skill points or fatigue or something like that. Something that you have a resource that you can spend to cast a spell or to use a particular move. Like I'm going to use my disarm move, so that costs me 5 skill or something like that. There's a little bit more math type combat involved.
Well, and we can pretty unilaterally say, we talked to One Joe about this for a bit, and he has a lot more data on it than I do, but the more math you add into a game like that, the slower it actually plays.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, you are playing as fast as the slowest person on the field as far as how quickly things can be picked up
if
and
you
recognized.
find Amtgard Combat or DAG or something like that too fast, then please try one of the lightest touch LARPs or something like that near your area. And Parlor LARPs is kind of like a talking combat based LARP if there is combat. Typically these are kind of like political and intrigue and this kind of stuff. Maybe a murder mystery type thing or something like that too.
Yeah, if you've ever, when you were in high school, if you had a drama club that put on one of the shows where everybody could come and have spaghetti and they did a murder mystery, that's an example of a parlor LARP.
has been a Mida.
Yeah.
If you watch The Office.
Honestly, in many ways, like the old Clue movie is almost a parlor LARP.
It is.
Tim
It's
Curry in it?
Yeah.
It did. He was the butler. The old Clue movie is the go-to for a good example of a parlor LARP.
A bad but really good, or a bad movie, but kind of a good example also is Murder
I think
by
that
Death.
it was
kinda
bad, but
like,
it was meant to be bad. It was so bad it came out the other end.
No. I think Clue is good, legitimately. I was saying Murder by Death is an older one that kind of makes fun of 1960s. I think someone can correct me on the dates, I'm sure. No, actually, no one won't. This is an obscure movie. But
Rabbit,
crime,
did you hear that?
what is it called? Like mystery writings, books and novels and stuff. But I can't remember off the top of my head.
But yeah, Vampire the Masquerade is another one. I've actually participated in one of the Vampire the Masquerade parlor LARPs. They're a lot of fun, especially if you are the type of person that's really big into LARPing. I am not really big into LARPing. I love the combat side of Amtgard. The LARPing side isn't one that I necessarily fell in love with, which is weird because I'm in a regular gaming group every single week. We do role-playing games, and just the live action part of it I never really fell into that.
Well, parlor LARPs to me I think they share more DNA with D&D.
Yeah, kind of.
Than they do
Agreed.
with
Their
Amtgard.
combat is sometimes done by rock, paper, scissors.
Dice.
Dice. Hell, you could play Triple Triad from Final Fantasy VIII as a way to resolve combat or something like that. There's all kinds of interesting things that you could do it.
We did for the one that I was to kind of set the scene for everyone. If you haven't already figured out what these are by our other descriptions, also if you haven't, you should go watch Clue.
God,
yes,
a costume was provided for me. I was actually dressed up. I had the full like vampire-esque getup, including like makeup to make me look pale. My long hair was slicked back. It was. Like, it was a really good production job. It sounds kind of cheesy, but it wasn't. It was a really good job. And everything that we did, I kind of got free. I had a piece of information that people were trying to get out of me. And I was a foreigner from out of town that had come in. I was just a vampire that had come because this was a really important meeting that was happening. And they had to get the information, and they could just talk to me and get it and promise favors. If it came down to it, then we had a dice. We had a D10 that we could roll. And whoever got the higher roll won, and if their roll was a lot higher, then they could get more information. So there was a lot of really cool things going on there.
Have you ever seen What We Do in the Shadows?
I've watched all of them.
I watched the original. I haven't watched any of the follow-up
They
stuff.
made it into a show that's very much like The Office, and picturing you in vampire garb makes me think of
Nandor.
Yeah, Nandor.
The Relentless, because I never relent.
Because I never relent. Like, this is just look up Nandor the Relentless.
Oh, dude, I could cosplay that.
Oh,
Yeah, you
totally
could. That's what when you said they gave you a costume, I was like, oh, you were on a TV show and they didn't pay you for it.
Yeah, except that this happened in 2003 or so.
I mean, because of the way they filmed it, it could have.
Yeah, you never know.
But yeah, so that's when we're referring to parlor in general, it means that it's something that you could play in a parlor. There's not going to be any like sword-based combat. There's not going to be any hidden daggers. Like, there might be a prop dagger that you find somewhere, but a lot of everything is going to be resolved by talking, by figuring things out, by some other mechanic like rolling,
by like political intrigue type stuff.
Yeah,
or something
political
like that.
intrigue is a big one.
That's another one that's a parlor LARP, kind of not really exclusive per se, but like.
You don't see it in a lot of the other games,
the other
so.
ones it's a more unique thing to it.
That's another fire truck, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Weird. Anyway, parlor LARPs share a lot of their DNA with things like D&D, and I think you can actually see some what I would consider to be advanced role play in those. There's
Agreed.
Really, I mean, you
would be more in character in a parlor LARP than you would be in probably any other of these games.
Yeah, there's not a lot of political intrigue in D&D unless you have a stellar DM, and if you do, thank them, buy them coffee, something.
99% of the D&D groups are just murder hobos, and we all know it.
Yeah, I'm guilty.
Props to those political intrigue and GMs.
Yeah, absolutely. So parlor LARPs broadly, not very physical, not very demanding. In fact, can be no combat. I think a good way to summarize.
Can be, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to double back then, because we sort of did those lightest touch. We did parlor LARPs. I want to double back to that sort of middle tier, where Amped Guard is kind of an outlier, that Bell Dag, and this is going to come down to why we play Amped Guard. Mm-hmm. Because I think the best differences we can point out, between Dagger here and Belagarth and everything else is say, we like Amped Guard. We also know Dagger here. Here's why I prefer one over the other. Mm-hmm. So I'll start first. I've not played a lot of Bell or Dag. There's one where you can kick shields. Is that Bell or Dag?
Both.
Both, yeah.
Both? Okay, I've played one of them then. A lot of fun. More pain than I was willing to experience in an average weekend. So I play Amped Guard because I don't have to expect that. Also, because when I hit somebody and they tell me it was light, that's frustrating. So for me, that sort of pushes me to Amped Guard. I also like some of the class stuff in Amped Guard a little bit better. Being able to play a bard or some kind of caster, a healer, really appealed to me a lot more.
You're just a bard. You play a bard in Final Fantasy 14 too. I hadn't thought about that. You're just a bard person.
97th percentile, baby. What's up? So yeah, like I guess the thing for me then is the combat makes more sense. All of my shots count. There are classes available, and that's sort of what pushes me to those. Why I don't play SCA? I'm poor. Why I don't play parlor LARPs? I'm bad at roleplay. I guess we can go down the line and sort of talk about why we don't play those games or why we prefer Amped Guard over them. But in a nutshell, for me, that's it.
I kind of echo that, but I'm going to go into a little bit of a different section that I like Amtgard for. I like that Amtgard has realized that its community is bigger than just the minor game that happens every weekend or every month, depending upon what game you're talking about. So with Amtgard, we have the... I think we already went over it with all the awards and stuff, right? Yeah. So we have the award system and things like that, which kind of recognizes people who don't necessarily physically play a battle game. We have people who are enjoying making art, and I have learned, so many random skills from pursuing some of these things like sewing or leatherworking or things like that that I would have never done in most of the other ones, I don't think, because there was nothing to really... I mean, to be honest, I'm kind of to some degree achievement hunter type person. So like, I like the idea of like doing something and getting like a check mark in return. It's just my personality. So that's also something that you can do in Amtgard. Just don't make it like you're 100%. This is the only reason I play kind of thing, because you will burn out and just quit because of it. But as something as a goal or target, it's something that's very easily looked at. Let's see, other things. I have infrequent like tennis elbow issues that make it harder on me to play
Disc golf.
Bell. Yeah, that too. Dag and Bell on a more regular basis. So Amtgard for me, while it will still aggravate it, is a lot better on it for me personally. What else?
Well, I think you've touched on something really cool there too, and that's that. And this is why we play Amtgard and why it's so, we think it's good for everybody. It casts a really wide net. Mm-hmm. I don't think Amtgard has the best combat. I definitely don't think Amtgard has the best immersion. I don't think we have the best of a lot of things, but we have everything. We have a crafting community. We have an award system that mostly works pretty well. It could always be improved. We have pretty great combat. I think it's really interesting. We have decent immersion depending on the event you're going to. So whatever you're looking for, there's something you can find in Amtgard that will appeal to you.
It's the full phrase of the jack of all trades thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember the full...
jack of all trades, master of none, still better than master of one.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is part of it too. I really like the class-based system stuff. It is another combat puzzle that I really like to use to try and unfold basically. So for me, that's a really big thing. I think that's the big generalized thing. Like, community is the one thing, but all of these things have some sort of community. This is just one I fit in better.
Or because the Fast and the Furious memes are super populous right now. Family. It's all about family.
Yeah.
This is going to date this episode. Also, I don't know what you're talking about.
YouTube's going to date the episode. It's fine.
Yeah.
I don't need armor. I have family.
No, for me, we actually covered a lot of the reasons that that I like it. One, the really big one for me was I feel like it's easier for people to get into Amtgard. We don't have a high monetary bar to enter. We actually have a zero monetary bar. There's people that played our game for years and years and years that never even owned their own swords. I don't recommend that, but it's an option. There, you can be a hobo and just bum swords forever.
We don't recommend that.
Like I said, I don't recommend it, but there was people that could come out and they did not have the money to spend on anything, and they wanted to come out and have a good time. And the Amtgard community, your part can make that happen for you.
Yeah.
I think that
that's not to say that the other ones don't do that either, but they are more willing to help bring you there, whereas Amtgard, you don't necessarily need help to be brought there.
Agreed. With Dag and Bell, it was kind of a bad experience with one of the very first Amtgard Dag Bell crossover events that happened. This is not Dagahir or Belagarth's fault. And the relationship between all of our games has improved immensely. But in the early aughts, the games didn't talk very much. And it was...
Hell, Dagahir, a long time. I don't think it's the same now, but I haven't been on their main forums. At one point, literally made it an offense to mention any other game on their forums.
Yeah. So
Boy, that's a good move. Censorship always works, right?
Yeah.
yeah. So there was I have a funny. I want to sidetrack to tell a funny story about that, but we'll come back to it.
We don't tell funny stories on this podcast.
Yeah, I know. So we'll put a pin in this because we've got to come back to the funny Bell or Dag story.
Okay.
Because it involves Zeb.
Oh, beautiful.
So Bell and Dag, that first event did not go well. The AmpGuard community was not very well received. They weren't treated very well. And please understand, this is not a reflection of Bell and Dag as they exist today. This was a reflection of how they existed in like 2004.
Well, this is why you chose AmpGuard over Bell and Dag.
It is. This is me personally. And if I'm being fair, the AmpGuard community didn't really treat the Bell and Dag people at their own event very well either.
Yeah, there was animosity.
But
yeah.
we worked through that. And the Sword Knight Bootcamp crew was one of the groups that was very integral in making that happen. They started bringing in teachers from Dag and Bell to teach in AmpGuard.
Yeah, well, so this was a Beltane event in Nashville that you're talking about. And literally the year after I went, and it was completely the opposite. I felt super included in everything. Everyone was really cool. So like that change happened literally within a year.
Yeah, super quick. But this was kind of one of those things where I don't know if everyone from all of the different games had ever been on a field together. So the AmpGuard people were trying to show how AmpGuard cool they were. The Bell and Dag people were trying to be perhaps a little over-aggressive with some of the things that don't exist in AmpGuard, like their shield bashing rules,
Right.
their ability to grapple, which those two games in particular, you can actually grapple in. So I can
I
go
think
in
it's
with...
just one of them, isn't it?
Is it just one of them?
No, I'm pretty sure it's both.
it both?
But it is
Okay.
a very limited. There's no throws. There's no tripping.
Like
Yeah.
you can only
Things
grapple
like
somebody who's more armored than you are. There's
bigger than you, I think.
Well, you can only initiate up. You can't
Yeah.
initiate down.
So I
if
could
you're-
never initiate with anyone.
Right.
But people could initiate with me.
No,
Anyways,
no. I mean, like if you have armor on, you cannot initiate a grapple.
yeah.
You might be able to initiate with another person with armor. I don't remember for sure. But if I have no armor on, then you as an armor wearer cannot initiate a grapple with me.
Yeah, that's
or
fair.
at least that
That'd be
may have been
fucking
used thing or
brutal.
something
Holy
like
crap.
that. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we had some guys that, you know, they got folded up like tacos there. There was a whole lot of your shot wasn't hard enough or whatever. So it put a bad taste in my mouth. That's why I didn't go with Dag Bell early on. Again, those are not the games that exist anymore. Like Jeff said, less than a year later, the community had a great relationship. We have had some absolutely brilliant fighters that have come from Dag and Bell. You know, I'm looking at you, Peter the Quick. I'm looking at you, Bakhtar, who was more of a local guy here. I don't know if he's known on the international scene.
Maybe within that community, yeah.
You know, I'm looking at you, Xander. And we've had
Oh, his game name's like Thunderbird or something. like that.
Thunderbird. Yeah, sorry, I don't know your your name over there. The
Some car that was popular in the late 80s, early 90s.
Who's Fiero again?
yeah, and we've had some people that have come from Dag and Bell over to AmpGuard that do really, really well. A lot of this, because we're in the Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina area, we have a lot of Sons of Terra around here. You know, shout out to Aiden, shout out to Bell, shout out to what's Ice's name?
Telfair.
Telfair. Yeah.
Nice, yeah.
Shout out to Telfair. And
You almost stole that sign down in Florida.
yeah, I did.
Because it was Telfair Way. I remember
Yeah.
this now.
So the game, all of the games have grown in a better way from all of those. But for a long time, it was kind of a bad taste for me there. I think that, and this is echoing some things that the other two have said, I think that Dag and Bell actually have a cooler on-site community than the AmpGuard that I play. I won't say all AmpGuard, but they all camp. They all have walkabout and are social and are having fun.
Bigger market rows.
Bigger
typically.
market rows.
Was that Godric that confirmed that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because he cross games too.
So that part I love more than what we currently have going on, but it can always be improved. But it
Winter's Edge is changing to some degree with that anyway. Like with the Market Row, it's becoming more and more a thing to have a market crat and have people who are actually selling stuff.
Well, and put a pin in that because I have a thing for that as well once you're done.
Sure. But like Lucas had said, I don't think that that our like on-site immersion stuff, the fun camping and everything like that, is what it was in Amtgard when I was younger. I don't think we do that the best. I don't think that our magic system is necessarily the best. And it's not because I don't love our magic system. I actually love the magic system in Amtgard. But for someone new coming in,
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And the people that are working, a shout out to everybody that's working on that to make it easier. V8 was a huge improvement. I'm sure V9 will be a step up as well. But it doesn't change the fact that when you first get in, there's a lot to learn.
Yep.
The class system, I think that we just do better than any of the other groups that have any kind of class-based system, and that includes Lightest Touch stuff.
There's a kind of real big difference with it. A lot of the Lightest Touch LARPs and stuff like that, you're just your character. You look like you, and that's it. Whereas Amtgard
boring
isn't.
for me.
Yeah,
Looking like me is boring. Sorry.
You're with Amtgard, we're an open information game, at least to some extent. So if you look around and you have a red sash on, I know you're a healer. Whereas in like Dystopia Rising or something like that, you may not have any clue that I'm actually a combat healer or something like that.
Yeah, right.
One of the things about Amtgard, though, that I think we like you were hinting at that we're about to gloss over is the fact that Amtgard changes rapidly, and it tries its best to stay modern. You said something there that just kind of went over, but we're on version 8 of our game.
Yeah.
We're working on version 9 now. So Amtgard, and I can't speak to every other game. I don't know the pace of those games or how quickly they change, but Amtgard does, and is willing to change to fit what its players want. They pay attention. They make the changes. There's a lot of contention sometimes when a thing gets changed, but by and large, that's backed up by tons of players. And we have a representative system that I don't think most other games have. I know, at least with like SCA and some of those, they don't have a player-run body that mandates how the game functions. Some games may, but ours is very, if you look at like how the U.S. is structured, whether or not you like it, we have representatives that we elect in Amtgard, and then they go, vote for us on an international scale for how the game is going to move forward.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think that's huge if if you're concerned about playing those other games and not getting your voice heard. There's no guarantee that you step in day one and start making changes, but you can make changes if you're willing to. If you're willing to petition and put the data together and get the crowd surge behind you, you can get that change made. From come hell or high water if you're really committed to it.
Well, and that was my the last point that I was going to make for why I picked Amtgard is, I have at different points bitched about the political system that we have in Amtgard, and I stand by any of the complaints that I have ever made, but we have one.
Yeah.
We have one for me to be pissed that it could be improved. And you don't get that in all of the other games. And this isn't a shot across the bow at those games, though. Those games don't need, to defend themselves from me. They're doing fine on their own.
Right.
But I like the fact that the three of us can get together and decide that this one thing that's been going on isn't being done the best way that it can. And that movement can become an international thing that gets the rules for the entire game changed.
Yeah.
That's a powerful tool.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked in the last episode about the way that Amtgard is structured, and we talked about how like there's your local level sheriff at the lowest level, and then there's the Amtgard International Board of Directors. And one of the things we said there was the highest body in the game, the group that the Amtgard International Board of Directors answers to, is the Circle of Monarchs, which is people you have directly elected.
Yeah, I mean, you also have things where just in your own kingdom, you have all things where your kingdom can clarify things that your kingdom is confused about, can fix rules, not changing our rules of play in Amtgard, but can fix different things that your kingdom does. Again, within your own kingdom, your all thing is the highest, is the most powerful entity.
This is your kingdom's constitution, more or less.
It is that exists, and I love that. I love the fact that at its heart, the power of Amtgard is at its people.
Yeah. I mean, for example, do you think archery is super important?
I do.
Are you mad that archery isn't highly enough awarded in our game, that there are no paths to knighthood for archery, that there are no specific awards for archery? you can work within your kingdom to build awards for archery, maybe even build a ladder for archery. And then, if that gets adopted widely enough, we can push for the game to create something as a knighthood for archery. There are already kingdoms that are doing that even.
Yeah.
So, this isn't just limited to, we talk a lot about, okay, when this event happens, you got to check your Kapora, and whether or not your park is 15, at 15 members, is it a barony? Check your Kapora. Your Kapora also has, some custom stuff there as well that you can build in. So this is, when we complain and we say, oh, we want a unified Kapora, this is why there isn't one. Because kingdoms each have their own way of doing things, and sometimes it's not even there. Sometimes it is something that is just codified as a culture thing within your kingdom. So there's a lot of variation, but you can make those changes happen outside of our rules of play.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's me. That's why Amtgard for me, it was, as you had said, I don't think that we do everything the best, but I think that the mix that we have ends up being better than a lot. And then the way that our political system is structured, the fact that we have one, and then the way that it's structured, and the fact that a normal person with a great idea can directly impact change, not just on your local park, but all the way up the ladder, is a big draw for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to stop and talk really quick about cross gaming, because we've mentioned it a few times, and on its face, it looks really simple, right? You move from one game to the other and back and forth. And we talk about people who do this often that we know. As far as Amtgard is concerned, and I can't speak for the other games, but as far as Amtgard is concerned, there's no restriction on cross gaming. As long as your gear is legal for our game, bring it on over. So if you are playing Belagarth right now and you have a stick that is, Belagarth legal, as long as it, meets our combat requirements, bring it on over, bring it out to your local park, start playing. Be advised there's going to be some differences in rules. Certainly if you're coming from one of those, contact is limited to just weapons. And some other wonky rules that I'm sure your park will explain to you. No shield checking, no grabbing, please. But you can absolutely cross game. You can bring your stuff down and play Amtgard and give it a shot. It's not something that you have to commit to if you're already in one of those other games.
Yeah, and I mean, archery is a great example of where, Dagon Bell, the archers, their arrows are in almost every way safer than Amtgard arrows because they're more padded. They require open cell foam on the ends. They're softer.
Because they're more padded, they're moving slower, so there's less force being applied.
Absolutely. But they can hit people in the head.
Yeah.
And you cannot do that in Amtgard. No shot to the head by anything counts. It is not considered a valid shot. So again, just another one of those small changes from one to the other.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Teflon, you were queuing up to say something?
I'm good.
No, okay. So we will, I think, cap this here. Suffice it to say, there's a lot of differentiation between those games. You might play them for any number of reasons. It can be as simple as, there's not an Amtgard park where you're at, but there is a DAG park. Cool, go play DAG. But we want any new player potentially approaching the game to know what those things are, because you're going to hear about them, and then just kind of know what your options are. And if you're a DAG player looking at Amtgard, maybe this tells you something that you didn't know. So yeah, take that to heart. Play the other games if you can, and if they appeal to you, there's no harm in playing another LARP that you think is better. Like I said before, when you grow this community, it grows everything. We're going to cap it here, I think. This is going to... Go ahead.
Did we get to what you wanted a pen put in earlier?
We did, although we did not get to your thing. You said you had a funny story.
Yeah, so I do have a funny story. This funny story probably doesn't belong on a What the Heck is Amtgard, but we're going to do it anyways. So we mentioned that, again, we're stepping back in time to a time where the games didn't really talk to one another, weren't really friendly towards one another necessarily, and Daga here at this time had a rule that you weren't allowed to talk about other games. And so as an example of how silly we out at Amtgard are, they found a picture of Sir Gillen online.
Oh, God.
And they put it up on their forums. Now, Sir Gillen at the time triads have already been formed, so he is wearing his triad garb, and fighting sword and board and wearing a bandana and all of it. There's logos everywhere, I'm sure. I don't remember the picture, but I'm sure that there were logos in it that they were pointing to. I'm sure that, the sword cover was a little ripped or torn or something because he'd been fighting a long time. Here's the thing, though. They didn't just find and copy the picture. They linked directly from the Triad website at the time. And so Sir Gillen got a notification on the back end
Yeah, he was getting a ton of traffic and requests from that.
and figured out that they had used that to link and change the picture. And I won't tell you what he changed the picture to. Use your imagination.
Right.
But he made them look silly for trying to kind of break down what's going on and not even taking the time to properly copy credit or copy the
At
picture
least
or
just
something.
download it and re-upload it into your own photo bucket, which at the time is what you would have used.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was just my funny story was me going over to his house about the time that went live and just with some popcorn watching.
So play a LARP. We don't care which one. If you choose Amtgard, that's fantastic. But they're out there. You should explore them. Stick around. Next week, we're going to touch on our newbie corner, which I think is the media section of this podcast. So that's why we're kind of ending short this week.
Yep.
Newbie corner is going to cover things like, how long will my park let me go with loaner gear? What to expect in my first few days? What do I do if there's something I don't like or if I see an improvement that needs to be made? What to expect at your first big event? How to get better. There's going to be some additional resources there. So stick around for that as well. And then I think that will cap off our series. And then we've got some guests lined up. Do we want to talk about those now or?
No. We got to wait.
All right.
It's going to be a surprise.
I'm going to hit this outro. Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube or Spotify to get notified about new episodes. And make sure to follow us on Facebook for announcements and more.